concrete walls echo with shouting voices. 5 military interrogators surround the suspected terrorist they captured at the Syrian border. Standard enhanced interrogation. She's been caught with explosive materials and foreign documents. They think she's planning attacks on American forces, but when they expose her lower back during the search, the tattoos covering her spine make them all step backward in shock. What happens next will reveal the most classified military operations protecting American troops overseas. It's 0230 hours at a classified detention facility somewhere in the Middle East. Staff Sergeant Maria Venom Santos sits in zip-tie restraints, facing 5 military intelligence officers who believe they've captured a high-value terrorist target. To everyone processing her detention, she's exactly what the evidence suggests. A foreign operative with explosives training planning attacks on American military installations. The evidence appears overwhelming. Bomb-making materials in her possession, encrypted communications with known terrorist networks, detailed maps of American base locations with security vulnerabilities marked. A perfect profile of someone conducting reconnaissance for coordinated attacks on U.S. forces. Major Davidson leads the interrogation team. 12 years of military intelligence operations. He's questioned terrorists, extracted intelligence from hardened operatives, prevented attacks that would have killed hundreds of Americans. Tonight's suspect represents exactly the kind of threat he's trained to neutralize. Santos, you're facing charges of terrorism, conspiracy to commit acts of war against United States forces, and possession of explosive devices with intent to cause mass casualties. Cooperation now determines whether you spend life in military prison or face execution for acts of terrorism. Maria looks around the detention facility with eyes that have seen too much combat and carried too many secrets. For 8 months, she's been conducting the most dangerous undercover operation in special operations history. Tonight, that operation may end with her own military executing her as a terrorist. Major, I need to contact Colonel Martinez at Joint Special Operations Command. My mission requires clearance levels beyond your authorization to discuss. Davidson examines her like she's lost her mind. Santos, you're a suspected terrorist caught with bomb-making materials. You don't have contacts at JSOC, and Colonel Martinez doesn't take calls from people planning to kill American soldiers. But Maria Santos isn't a terrorist planning attacks on American forces, and the explosive materials in her possession aren't components for targeting U.S. installations. They're specialized equipment for infiltrating terrorist networks that plan real attacks on American troops overseas. Major, those materials are tools for deep cover operations targeting terrorist cells. I've been infiltrating networks planning coordinated attacks on multiple American bases throughout the region. Santos, we've heard every cover story terrorists create when they're caught. The evidence proves you're planning attacks on American forces, not preventing them. Davidson signals his team. Enhanced interrogation protocols for suspected terrorists include complete physical examination for concealed weapons, communication devices, or identifying marks that confirm their operational background and network affiliations. Full search. Document everything. Look for concealed weapons, communication equipment, or identifying marks that prove her terrorist network connections. Maria's hands clench as she realizes her 8-month deep cover operation is about to be exposed by American interrogators who don't have clearance to understand what they're about to discover. But the alternative is allowing terrorist attacks on American bases because she can't prove her mission authorization. Major, before your team proceeds, understand that what you're about to see is classified at levels requiring Joint Chiefs authorization to discuss. My identity exposure could compromise ongoing operations protecting American forces. Santos, classified markings don't excuse terrorism. Remove her clothing for complete examination. Now, Maria slowly allows the interrogation team to remove her tactical clothing, revealing tattoos that make all 5 interrogators freeze in complete shock. Her lower back, spine, and hips display detailed military operations data that doesn't appear in any terrorist database. Unit insignia from classified special operations forces. Mission coordinates from operations that officially never happened. Service recognition proving participation in America's most secret counterterrorism missions. The largest tattoo covers her entire lower back. Detailed coordinates from classified operations in Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia. surrounded by unit designations that exist only in the most compartmentalized special operations databases. Each marking represents missions where she provided intelligence that eliminated high-value terrorist targets. Jesus Christ, Davidson whispers. Those aren't terrorist identification marks, but the tattoos tell only part of her story. Embedded within the operational coordinates are intelligence details proving Maria's role in classified missions that prevented terrorist attacks on American installations. Target location she personally verified. Mission dates corresponding to successful eliminations of terrorist leadership. Unit credentials that prove 8 years of service in operations these interrogators have never heard of. Maria's body is a classified operations map proving 8 months of deep cover work conducted while appearing to be a terrorist planning attacks on American forces. Each tattoo marks successful infiltration of terrorist networks that resulted in prevented attacks on U.S. installations. Major, the intelligence I've gathered during 8 months of deep cover has prevented coordinated terrorist attacks on 14 American military installations. The explosive materials you discovered were tools for maintaining credibility with terrorist networks I've been infiltrating. Davidson examines tattoos displaying operational details requiring security clearances far beyond his authorization level. Mission coordinates that shouldn't exist. Unit insignia that don't appear in standard military databases. Service recognition proving participation in operations that officially never happened. Santos, if this is accurate, why is there no record of your special operations assignment in military intelligence databases? Maria's official service record shows routine assignments because her actual record is compartmentalized at levels that don't exist in standard intelligence systems. For 8 months, she's been officially assigned to logistics duties while actually conducting infiltration operations against terrorist networks planning attacks on American forces. Sir, deep cover operations require complete legend maintenance. My official record shows standard assignments because my actual service would compromise ongoing operations and endanger other personnel conducting similar infiltration missions. The interrogation team realizes they're examining evidence of American special operations that exist at classification levels beyond their clearance. The suspicious explosive materials were operational tools for infiltrating terrorist networks. The encrypted communications were intelligence reports about planned attacks on American installations. Davidson reaches for his secure communication device to contact superiors with clearance levels that might explain what they've discovered. But before he can establish contact, the detention facility door opens to admit someone whose presence immediately changes everything about the interrogation. Colonel Patricia Martinez, Commander, Joint Special Operations Command, enters with authority that makes 5 military intelligence officers suddenly understand they've discovered operations far beyond their clearance level and jurisdictional authority. Gentlemen, you will immediately cease all interrogation activities regarding Staff Sergeant Santos. Her mission is classified at levels requiring presidential authorization to discuss. Davidson's confusion reflects recognition that Colonel Martinez shouldn't be personally involved in interrogating a suspected terrorist unless that terrorist represents something far more significant than routine counterterrorism operations. Colonel, Staff Sergeant Santos has been detained for possessing explosive materials and planning terrorist attacks on American military installations. The evidence indicates systematic preparation for coordinated strikes against U.S. forces. Colonel Martinez examines Maria's tattoos with recognition that comes from authorizing the operations that earned them. Each marking represents missions she personally approved, coordinates she verified, terrorist elimination she authorized based on intelligence Maria provided while maintaining deep cover. Major Davidson, Staff Sergeant Santos hasn't been planning terrorist attacks. She's been conducting the most critical counterterrorism operation currently protecting American forces in this theater while maintaining cover that requires appearing to be exactly what you suspect. The colonel's briefing transforms the interrogation from terrorism investigation to recognition of service that can't be acknowledged through normal military channels. For 8 months, Maria has infiltrated terrorist networks planning coordinated attacks on American military installations throughout the region. The intelligence staff Sergeant Santos has gathered prevents terrorist attacks that would result in hundreds of American casualties. Her apparent terrorist activities were cover for infiltrating networks that conventional intelligence gathering cannot penetrate. Maria's 8-month operation involved appearing to plan attacks on American forces while actually gathering intelligence about real terrorist operations targeting U.S. installations. Her apparent terrorism was cover for preventing actual terrorism by networks that would execute attacks killing American soldiers. Staff Sergeant Santos had identified terrorist operatives, attack plans, weapons caches, and coordination networks that enable preemptive strikes, preventing the largest coordinated terrorist offensive against American forces since the beginning of regional operations. The tattoos covering Maria's body represent 8 months of deep cover operations conducted while maintaining credibility with terrorist networks that would torture and execute her if they discovered her actual mission. Each marking corresponds to intelligence gathering that enabled successful counterterrorism operations. Davidson realizes the interrogation team nearly executed an American hero whose service record can't be acknowledged because recognizing her achievements would compromise ongoing operations against terrorist networks targeting American military personnel. Colonel, why wasn't our interrogation team briefed about Staff Sergeant Santos's actual operational status? Major, deep cover operations require absolute compartmentalization. Staff Sergeant Santos's mission was so classified that briefing your team would have compromised her operational security and endangered ongoing operations against terrorist networks planning attacks on American installations. Maria's 8-month mission succeeded in providing intelligence that enables preemptive elimination of terrorist cells planning coordinated attacks on American military bases. The information she gathered prevents attacks that would have killed hundreds of American soldiers and support personnel. But the cost of her success extends beyond risking execution by her own military for apparent terrorism. 8 months of appearing to betray everything she's sworn to protect while actually conducting operations that protect American forces from terrorist attacks. Staff Sergeant Santos will receive recognition appropriate to her service, but that recognition must remain classified to protect ongoing operations against terrorist networks that continue planning attacks on American military installations. Colonel Martinez's departure leaves 5 interrogators with new understanding of service that extends beyond conventional military recognition. Maria Santos's tattoos represent sacrifice that can't be acknowledged because acknowledging her achievements would compromise efforts to prevent terrorist attacks. 2 weeks later, Maria returns to deep cover operations that don't officially exist, protecting American military installations from terrorist attacks while maintaining credibility with networks that would kill her if they discovered her true mission. But this story didn't start 8 months ago when Maria began deep cover infiltration. It started 3 years earlier when she watched terrorist attacks on American military installations that could have been prevented if someone with access to terrorist networks had been gathering intelligence. The day she volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in counterterrorism, appearing to plan attacks on American forces while actually preventing real attacks by terrorist networks that conventional intelligence cannot penetrate. Deep cover counterterrorism requires sacrificing everything that defines military service identity. Maria's official record shows routine assignments because her actual record would reveal operations that must remain classified to protect ongoing missions against terrorist organizations. For 8 months, she's conducted intelligence gathering that appears to be terrorist planning while actually providing information that enables preemptive strikes against networks planning real attacks on American military personnel. The psychological cost of appearing to betray military service while actually protecting it exceeds what most personnel can imagine. Maintaining credibility with terrorist networks requires genuine commitment to apparent betrayal that makes discovering authentic loyalty psychologically challenging. But the operational results justify the sacrifice. Terrorist attacks prevented before execution stages. Attack plans disrupted before they threaten American installations. Intelligence networks penetrated that conventional counterterrorism cannot access. Where heroes carry markings that tell stories of service requiring them to appear to betray everything they've sworn to protect. Where the most dangerous missions involve maintaining credibility with enemies planning to kill fellow Americans. And where the greatest recognition comes in tattoos representing operations that officially never happened. Remember Staff Sergeant Maria Santos when you encounter military personnel whose service seems questionable but whose competence suggests capabilities beyond apparent assignments. Sometimes the most effective counterterrorism operations require appearing to conduct terrorism while actually preventing it, because sometimes protecting American military personnel requires appearing to threaten them, and sometimes the most classified service involves earning the trust of enemies planning to kill Americans while gathering intelligence that saves American lives.